Good evening, this is Brass Tacks. I'm Zaka Jacob. Ever since the Taliban came to power in Afghanistan, there is a whole class of people, both here in India as well as abroad, who have been saying, oh, let's give them a chance. This is Taliban 2.0. They're going to be moderate. They're going to be more inclusive. Well, you know what? Their actions of the last 2 weeks have been anything but. And today was the final nail. A Taliban spokesperson saying on national TV that a woman's only job is to give birth and raise children and not to be ministers in government. Why should anyone give this extremist, violent, brutal group a chance at all? That's the question we're asking on Brass Tacks, but before we get to that, here's the story so far.
The Taliban regime, UN-designated terrorists calling the shots in the new government. All men, no women, no minorities, and the agenda, the iron writ of Sharia law, something laid bare by this Taliban spokesperson.
ضرور نیست که در کابینه زن باشه. من اینقدر برات میگم. یعنی ضرور است که زن داشته باشیم ما در کابینه.
چرا ضرور نیست آقای؟
چی ضرورت داره؟ تو ضرورتش بر من بکن.
خب زن نصف پیکر جامعه نیست مگه؟
ولی ما خود نصفش ندانستیم اونا را.
Just after taking control, the Taliban went on a PR offensive, promising women will be represented and allowed to work and study under Sharia law. But oppression has turned into state policy on the streets. As per the UN Refugee Agency, close to 200,000 Afghan women and children have been forced to flee their homes since the end of May. Local clerics have been ordered to draw up lists of Afghan girls to marry off to Taliban fighters. The Ministry of Women Affairs has been replaced with the Ministry for the Promotion of Virtue and Prevention of Vice. Businesses catering to women are being closed down, there is segregation in classrooms, and Afghan women will not be permitted to play sports, as the Taliban says it will expose their bodies to the media. The women of Afghanistan are fighting back, a generation which has experienced 20 years of freedom. But the crackdown has been swift, with Taliban fighters gunning down and thrashing protesters, enforcing the will of the regime with brute force. In fact, the Taliban has banned all protests, mandating that demonstrations require legal licenses. Journalists are also facing the brunt of repression. Female anchors and reporters have been banned, and male journalists who anger the Taliban are tortured, while others are forced to toe the regime's line with gunmen in studios. With all of this, the world is still playing a wait-and-watch game.
Recognition or something like that. Let's just treat the Doha meeting for what it is. It is just a meeting. And I think these are still very early days, and I don't have further on that.
I believe it's too early to say. Too early to say. Is there any government officially available in Kabul now? Not yet.
The United Nations Security Council adopted a strong resolution on Afghanistan, but Russia and China abstained. At the BRICS summit, all nations called for peace through intra-Afghan dialogue. But with the reign of state-sponsored repression, can the world still remain a mute spectator? In New Delhi, Ayushman Singh Jamwal.
All right, joining us on the talking point this evening here on Brass Tacks, Razia Moshmi is an Afghan lawyer and human rights activist. Aparajita Sarangi is BJP Member of Parliament and spokesperson. Ifra Jan is spokesperson of the National Conference Party. And Dr. Zeenat Shaukat Ali is Director General of the Wisdom Foundation. Let me start with Razia. You know, maybe it doesn't surprise you and other folks who've been attuned to what the Taliban is capable of. But for a spokesperson of the Taliban to come on national TV and say that the job of women is just to produce children and not to be ministers, why should anybody have ever given this Taliban a chance thinking that they will be moderate or inclusive or whatever have you?
I have to firstly say that we have been raising voices of women via social media or even in protests on the streets, that the world should not recognize Taliban government because they are not changed and they won't be changed anymore. And they have approved that they still have the same violence ideology about imposing the most extremist Sharia laws and regulations in a society, especially on women.
So
That's
what
why
what do you have to say, Razia, to all those people who said, "Oh, this is a refined Taliban. They're going to be moderate and they're going to be inclusive." I mean, look at what the spokesperson said. Look at what has been happening over the last 2 weeks. Those pictures of gun-toting Taliban men with AK-47s, scaring women. Look at that. Look at that picture. Scaring women and chasing them away. What do you have to say to those people who said, this is going to be a different Taliban?
Taliban are not different. They are the same evils that they were 20 years ago. They even get more brutal. I'm listening news from families, relatives, and friends in other provinces that they start to lashing people on the streets because of their appearance and the way that they're dressed up. Or even if they do not have beard for men, or while women they do not wear burqa. So they are just torturing people. So the reality is that Taliban are not changed. And we ask for that, we request for that they should not recognize their government.
No,
So
the
we do
reality
not
is that Taliban has not changed. And I want to ask Ifra Jan, look at all the events that have happened over the last 2 weeks, whether it is quelling the protests, and primarily these protesters have been women. They've quelled them with a heavy hand. The spokesperson coming on national TV and saying that a woman's only job is to procreate and not to be ministers. Why should we have ever given even a sliver of hope that this Taliban would be different? In fact, Dr. Farooq Abdullah said, I hope they do justice. Do you still believe that this Taliban will do justice?
Number one, Dr. Farooq Abdullah did not really say that he hoped the Taliban, he hoped somehow that they will do something. He precisely said that he wanted Taliban to do that. Pretty much how we as the Indian government sent a memorandum.
Do you, after seeing whatever has happened over the last 2 weeks,
we can't really
after having seen what's happened over the last 2 weeks, are you still willing to give this Taliban a chance?
I mean, honestly, Taliban does not want a chance, or it has nothing to do with the chance that Ifra Jan or the Farooq Abdullah Sahab give. Taliban does not need our endorsement. Taliban at this point needs Indian government's endorsement, and the Indian government has not
why don't you for once condemn this absolutely vile organization?
You asked me a question,
a spokesperson of this organization comes on TV and says a woman's only job is to procreate, and you won't condemn that.
Two points, Saka, if you just allow me to speak. Number one, the question that you asked specifically was that would you still endorse it? And I said the Taliban requires the endorsement of the government of India, and the government of India has not come out clear on the Taliban yet. For that matter, it's not even come out with a single statement. So yes, the BJP government needs to come out with a statement. Number two, the question asked to me, would I still have hope from them? No, I would definitely condemn this kind of a mentality, and I would want to remind you that unfortunately this is not limited to Taliban. When Yogi Adityanath was asked to question women's reservation,
why are you drawing this false equivalence? Why don't you once and for all, ma'am, just simply say that this ideology represented by this spokesperson who says women's only job is to procreate absolutely belongs to the 7th century? Why didn't you say it in as many words?
Yeah. How? Because if you replay my clip, I actually right at the outset said that I completely disagree with it. But unfortunately, this is a mentality not only limited to Taliban, it's also mentality Yogi Adityanath has at home. You don't want to talk about Yogi
condemnation.
You don't want to.
This false equivalence. It is you are saying X is bad. X is bad. So is Y.
I don't understand.
No, I don't understand. No. 1 second. X is bad. X is bad. No. It is well within your right. But Ifra Jan, to say that X is bad, but so is Y. I mean, why are you drawing this false equivalence? Why don't you for once and for all say that X is bad in and of itself.
Zaka ji, Mr. Zaka, just for once come out and say that I will not allow these remarks on Yogi Adityanath. What he has
Sir,
said is something that we will
ma'am,
not
it's
discuss
very
that.
simple.
Fine.
The,
I will not
the
discuss
debate
that.
topic tonight
Tell
is
me
not about
clearly,
Yogi
Zaka,
Adityanath.
that you do
The
not
debate
want
topic
the
tonight
remarks
is
on
on
Yogi Adityanath
Taliban,
to go
and
ahead.
it pains me to see that a woman like you is not
That's
willing to come out and
precisely
say
my question.
in an unqualified
That why
way,
an Indian
in an
like you
unqualified
is not
way,
upset.
you are not willing to condemn the Taliban. I'm sorry to
You
say
are
that.
not willing to condemn
Dr.
the people
Zeenat,
at home.
Dr.
Why are you
Zeenat
becoming
Shaukat
a
Ali,
shield
you know, this
for
is the
people at
problem.
home?
The problem is there are apologists for the Taliban. There are
The
people who
problem
want
is
to
that there
draw
are apologists
false
of-
equivalences for the Taliban. The
Zaka,
people
the
who want to
problem is
have
that there are
qualified
apologists like you
condemnations
sitting in
for the
India.
Taliban.
There are
That is the
apologists
problem,
like you
Zeenat Shaukat
who
Ali.
are misogynist
I am very,
supporters
very
and actually
clear.
some-
The Taliban and its behavior in and of itself is reprehensible. You do not need to justify it with somebody else's reprehensible behavior. What the Taliban is doing is bad.
Similar
Period.
ideology.
Zinat Shaukat
Yeah,
Ali.
it is bad.
Yes.
And
Zinat
so is
Shaukat Ali.
everything else.
I completely agree with you. It's deplorable, it's condemnable, and if we ever had any hopes that there is going to be any change in that mindset, I think we have to forget about it. Because what they are doing is actually going back into tribalism. You know, Zaka, it is so sad that as a very small scholar of Islam, you know, the Sharia law is a modern law. It's supposed to be a modern law. But these kind of people take it backwards in time and make it into tribalism. And today to say that women are only meant for reproduction, what does it mean? I am talking from the Islamic point of view. In the Quran, there is a mention of Queen Bilqis, who ruled over people. You rule over people not because of your sex, but because of the brains you have, because of your acumen, because of your foresightedness. Because
Ma'am,
you are better for that role.
is it too much to ask? Ma'am, is it too much to ask that people come out and condemn this behavior of the Taliban without any ifs and buts, without any caveats and conditions attached? Because that's what we are seeing amongst a class of people here in India and abroad, that, oh, we will condemn the Taliban, but what about this? I mean, frankly, it's what about
You don't want to.
No,
talk about
Dr.
it.
Dr. Zeenat, only Dr. Zeenat, please.
This condemnation has to be unequivocal, and there should be no false equivalences. There are other platforms for that, but this particular platform is meant for a particular kind of thinking and a rulership, a leadership that has come into very unfortunately into Afghanistan, and something that we should stand up against. You see, the very ideals that they stand up for and the very Islam they talk about is a non-entity. It is their own interpretation. It is not understandable. It is not acceptable.
Yeah, you know, I'll come to Abrajda Sarangi, but Ifrajan, I'll give you one more chance. You know, when you see an evil happen in front of you, when you see a murder happen in front of you, for example, you call out the murderer. You don't say, oh, what about this other person who also is a murderer? That may be the case. But this is a crime in and of itself. This is evil in and of itself. Why don't you just come out and say, I condemn what this Taliban spokesperson has said. I condemn what the Taliban stands for.
I really condemn what the Taliban has said and what the spokesperson of the Taliban has said. And I'm also amused with people like you who've suddenly become the defenders of human rights in India when hundreds of women like me, Ifra Jan, pregnant women could not have called an ambulance for 100 days when our internet was shut up. A Kashmiri woman went out for protest and she's still in jail under UAPA simply because she protested.
You are qualifying it, saying that because A is bad, B is also bad. Or because C is bad, D is also bad. No, the debate topic is not. The debate topic tonight, ma'am, is not whether Zakir Jacob is a hypocrite or not. No, that is not the debate topic. You may well call me a hypocrite. You may well call me a hypocrite. You're well within your right, but I'm very, very clear in my mind and my heart about some things. And one thing I'm absolutely clear about is that this Taliban spokesperson who says that a woman's only job is to reproduce and to procreate, I will unequivocally, universally condemn
Then
that
that's the only
mentality,
thing you
no
have to
matter
condemn.
what
Might as
religion
well
that
just do
person
that.
belongs to. I don't
That's
care if
the
that
only
person
thing
is a
you have to
Muslim or a
condemn.
Hindu
Might as well just do that,
or
you
a
know?
Christian. I will
Sure,
condemn
sure.
a person with such a mentality unequivocally,
That's the
no
only
ifs
thing
and
you're
buts.
condemning,
I'm
and
very
might as
clear
well just
about
do
it.
it unequivocally, because you're not going to condemn anything else.
No, I'm sick and tired of this what about trio, what about what happened here, and what about what happened there. Yes, that may be as bad in and of itself, but why don't you for once come out and say what is happening in Afghanistan, what these Talibs are doing is absolutely reprehensible. It is an evil, it is pure evil. That's it. Aparajita Sarangi.
No words, I would say, can adequately express our anguish at the statement of the spokesperson of Taliban. I would say we are vastly disturbed, but I would also say that we are not surprised. The spokesperson of Taliban has just conveyed what Taliban stands for. He has done his job. And let me tell you that Taliban is definitely not the improved version. It is not Taliban 2.0 as they had been claiming. I think this is just a trailer. What this spokesperson has said is just a trailer. We have seen the photographs. We are seeing the photographs the way, you know, the whips and sticks are being used against the women protesters. And what are these women saying? Women are saying we should be given some kind of berth in the cabinet. That is what they had been talking of.
Yeah.
And let me tell you, we are all aware of the fact that the 33 members cabinet does not have a woman, does not have a person from the minority community, and all these people who are there, in fact, I was just going through the list and I was reading an article on it. 14 out of 33 members of the cabinet are on UNSC's terrorism list.
Yes, correct.
They are all hardliners and they are all globally wanted terrorists holding key ministries.
Correct.
This is so very unfortunate. And talk about the women of Afghanistan at this juncture. You know, this Taliban 2.0, whatever it is the same as it was between 1996 and 2001. And they are saying that men and women cannot be studying in the same classrooms and that the females cannot be taught by male teachers.
I want to come.
And
I want
a lady,
to come
with
back.
all respect to
I
her,
want
I
to
must
come
say,
back
here
to
is a lady
moot
who
point.
is not actually
I want to come back
a spade. We have to call out a spade.
No. I'm fine. Ifra Jan may have her compulsions, which is fine. She may not want to call out the Taliban the way that you or I would want to. But Razia, as somebody who has lived in Afghanistan, as somebody who's an Afghan national, you are as much Muslim as Ifra Jan is. Why is there this, almost reluctance, squeamishness when it comes to calling out a wrong thing, an evil thing, as you see it? I mean, somehow there are people in Afghanistan, around the global community, here in India. Somehow, I wouldn't use the word apologist, but they're very reluctant to call out an evil for what it is. There is still something as very clear as day and night, right and wrong. And that is the case here. When a Taliban spokesperson says a woman's job is only to recreate or procreate and do nothing else, and therefore there should not be women cabinet ministers in the new government, that is wrong. Period. He has no business saying that. Razia.
I have to say that it was a big insult for Afghan people, especially for Afghan women. What the military of Taliban were doing 5 days ago, they were just broadcasting about all those equipments and weapons that they were using for committing suicide attacks inside our mosques, our wedding ceremonies, our funeral ceremonies, and our schools, our maternity hospitals, and they are proud of killing people. Using the word to apologize people, even we cannot use that. We are asking that they have to be persecuted.
Yeah.
They are war criminals.
Ifra Jan,
The way that they behave and treat Afghanistan is not forgivable and is not
as I see it, I mean, all the actions that the Taliban has taken, forget about the women's issue for a moment. whether it is not including minorities in the new government, whether it is not including anybody outside of the hardline view in this government, whether it is them saying that, you know, men and women can't go to the same colleges or there has to be barriers between them. You're seeing all of this. Outside of, you know, religion, whether you are Muslim or somebody else is Hindu, I am Christian, it does not matter. Leave aside our faith and our religious beliefs. There has to be at the core of all of us as human beings a right and a wrong, right?
Absolutely, Zaka.
And why
Absolutely.
don't you call it out for what it is? If it is a wrong, it is a wrong.
I think you need to play my clips probably thrice. I've constantly called it a wrong. I've constantly called it a wrong. I've constantly called it a wrong. But what I am also pointing out is that there are people at home also who've done similar things. For example, Yogi Adityanath, who has voiced very similar opinions, saying that we should not have a women's reservation bill because first we need to assess that what is the role of such activities and how does it affect the primary role of women, which is that of being mothers and good wives. Now, this is Yogi Adityanath sitting as the sitting Chief Minister of Uttar Pradesh who has said that. I am saying that let's all stand up for women everywhere and let's condemn the Taliban.
Why do you need
Huh?
an X wrong to justify a Y wrong?
Nobody is
Why do you need an
justifying
A
it.
wrong to
Two
justify a
wrongs
B wrong?
Do not make it
Exactly.
two wrongs do
So
not
two
make a right.
wrongs do not
Two
make a
wrongs
right.
do not make
All
one
the
right.
more
That's
reason
exactly what I'm
why
trying
you
to
should
tell you.
condemn what this
I am
Taliban
pointing out-
spokesperson has said.
I am saying
Absolutely
that this
in and
guy-
of itself.
No, I am saying that this guy, Yogi Adityanath,
Dr.
was
Zeenat,
voted
I'll
by
give you the final
millions
word.
of
I'm so
people.
sad tonight that you know people like Ifra Jan have to
What
have
are you
used
saying,
the
Zaka?
have to use the
What are you going on
crutches.
and on about?
Have to use
He
the
does not-
crutches.
okay.
Have to use the crutches of some kind of false equivalence, even in her condemnation of what the Taliban is saying or doing. Dr. Zeenat, final word.
I think, Doctor, you know, Zaka, it is very sad. What the Taliban are doing per se has to be condemned. It is barbaric. Their entire approach to life, their entire coming to power, their entire, you know, the force with which they're standing against women, they're standing against their own religion.
Yeah.
They're talking about a Sharia which is, you know, which is in their minds and which is interpreted in their own manner. Believe me, I've written a book on the Sharia, so I understand what I'm talking about. But these kind of people, there is no two ways but to condemn them
All right.
for every action, for hitting the women, for beating the women, for stoning the women, for doing everything that Islam talks about. When Islam is talking about education, 805 verses in the Quran, it is the most often word
All
used
right.
next to the word Allah is the word ilm or knowledge. So what are they talking about?
Okay,
You know, men
Dr.
and women
Zeenat, thank you
cannot
so
study
much
together.
for joining us and putting that into perspective. I want to thank Dr. Zeenat, Ifra Jan, as well as Aparajita Sarangi and Razia for joining us. Like I said, something wrong, if you see it, you need to call it out. That's what differentiates us humans from animals. We have a very acute sense because of social conditioning, because of whatever reason, we have a very acute sense deep down of what is right and what is wrong. And unfortunately, you know, that's not happening in the case of the Taliban, certainly by some people here in India and abroad. Meanwhile, we're getting some piece of breaking news. Prime Minister Modi has chaired a high-level meeting to review the COVID situation as well as the vaccination drive. The Prime Minister was briefed about the augmentation of healthcare infrastructure, particularly in view of the third wave, which many are saying is likely to come in the next few weeks to the next few months. The states have been asked to maintain a buffer stock of medicines in every single district. Mario Shakil has more details on this. What more information do we have about this stock-taking meeting?
Yes, Zaka, this meeting was attended by the Principal Secretary to the Prime Minister, Cabinet Secretary, Health Secretary and Member Health of Niti Aayog, and other important officials were present in this meeting. The Prime Minister, in fact, was informed that around 58% of India's population has already received the first dose and around 18% have received the second dose. So the Prime Minister was updated about the vaccine pipeline and increased supply of vaccines. Besides that, he has taken the entire ecosystem about increased oxygen availability, including oxygen concentrators, cylinders, PSA plants. All those details were shared with the Prime Minister. and he has done district-wise analysis in terms of what is the support that is available in various districts, RT-PCR lab facility, which is very essential for tests, and of course he was briefed about the isolation beds, oxygen beds and ICU beds as well, and including pediatric ICUs, because it is being said that the next wave is likely to hit the children most. The big takeaway again, Zaka, here is that the Prime Minister has spoken about the need for constant genome sequencing to monitor emergence of new mutants.
All right, Maria, we'll leave it at that. Maria Shakil, our political editor there, with more details on that. That's a wrap. I'll catch you again Monday night, same time. Enjoy your weekend. Good night.